I decided that my first tips and tricks topic that I would want to go into is the general topic of video games in Java. Here are some popular games written in Java. Spiral Knights, which is a free to play MMO with procedurally generated dungeons. Slay the Spire, which is a deck building roguelike game. The old school version of RuneScape, which is a royal MMORPG. And one of the most popular games in general, Minecraft, which is a sandbox survival game. Some popular frameworks and game engines in Java is libgx is a pretty popular framework for 2D and it has 3D capabilities, and JMonkey Engine is is a 3D game engine for Java, and it also has VR capabilities. The main difference between frameworks and game engines is that game engines gives you a set of tools, and frameworks are much lighter weight because it just gives you what's necessary for programming aspects of games. Lightweight Java game library. It's utilized for graphics APIs like OpenGL, Vulkan, and OpenAL, which is for audio. And since it's utilized for graphics APIs, it's also utilized in projects like JMonkey Engine and the libgx framework in Minecraft. Another interesting fact is that in game programming, graphic APIs prefer utilization of floats over doubles. Graphics APIs are important to help developers because they act as a medium for accessing the graphics processor for applications. More modern graphics APIs, which are more complex and lower level programming, and which nets more performance, is DirectX and Vulkan. OpenGL is a older API and not as complex as them. I've already mentioned that libgx is a framework and has 2D and 3D capabilities. Um, in in order to install libgx, it requires Java JDK 17 or 21. It also utilizes OpenGL ES API and a project template tool that adds in web systems or libraries might be needed for your current project, like 2D Light, 3D Physics. A template that I used for the sample libgdx project was Application Listener to help with setting up inputs. I am working in the main class in the generated project file. I will start with setting up some textures and a viewport variables, and put in the textures as an object. And I will need to find the images for the file path for these textures. Now that I got the player and background images into the assets folder, I can now provide the directory of these assets. Here I am setting up the size of the display and of the view for the viewport so that I can have the size for my player cat sprite later, so it can move across the tiles between the 8 width of 8 and the height of 5, and so that my viewport can get my resolution size, which I set in the so that I can get the default application's set resolution. I'm setting up a function for player input to control my player sprite later on, and draw game to control my draw calls. On every frame, this function will clear the screen and redraw on my viewport. Now I need to set up a sprite batch so that I can draw on top of my viewport. As I keep typing this in, I do have a issue with my screen clearing. It is typed incorrectly. It's something I will cut and resolve later, which I just reinstall my template. But as I'm typing in the sprite batch for the background right now, it should be getting the the height and the width of the screen to draw the background. Also, I make sure for the sprite batch to end after it draws at the end of the frame. I also set up my cat player sprite a little bit differently, and I created a sprite for the cat texture image so that I can move it later on utilizing the movement function that I will make. The last thing I need to do to display the cat before I draw the batch is to initialize the size of the grid I set up earlier for the viewport. So I'm Yay, now we got the player and the background drawn to the screen. And remember, the draw order matters. That I'm drawing the background first before the player, or the player would go under the background. I set up a float for the movement speed variable. Uh, I was working on setting up the input, but I was having another issue with this template, which I believe it was because of the libraries, which should have been put in this template. But I made sure to set up the cat sprites translate x to speed, which that just means moving along the x-axis. And when I set up the for the movement to the other way, I had to set up for the negative x-axis. But also, I need to set up a delta time variable so that the game time move so that the player moves with game time instead of frame dependent, which can cause speeds to be quicker on stronger computers, and we want the speed of the game to be consistent. It is also easy to set up for the cat player to go up and down because 2D only has two vectors, x and y, and I utilized the translate of x and move the cat sprite. I'm going to use y to make the cat move up and down. Here are some pros and cons for Java games. Java's programming language has the schedule garbage collector, which could help with a lot of memory issues, but you cannot use it manually, which could also be seen as a con because it won't perform as well as like a language like C++. Java has some good cross compatibility with desktop platforms and mobile applications. And also, I mentioned in the JMonkey engine earlier, it was able to run on VR. So some cons and some issues that I definitely see is 3D game development has a lot of issues with performance in Java with JMonkey Engine and libgx not being as strong as things like Godot, Unreal, and Unity, which are developed more over years by bigger companies. Here are some sources that helped me program in libgdx and helped me for this presentation.